So Brian Stelter is really taking it hard that Jeff Zucker is gone. Jeff Zucker, of course, stepped down. He was probably pushed out, but he was stepped down because he had an affair with somebody who was working under him. He says it started recently, but the new information is that it didn't really, that he's sort of been with this woman for a long time. He didn't disclose it. He had to at least disclose it to CNN, and he didn't do that, or to AT&T, the parent company. He didn't do that. So he sent a letter and stepped down. And the CNN hosts are taking it hard, which is kind of hilarious. So in comes Brian Stelter. This is, I think, the show immediately after we learned that Zucker was stepping down. And I love this sanctimonious, smug, self-righteous rant. Read the banner as this comes up. This is hilarious to me. The banner's like, "This is CNN." And look at some of the stuff he says.
I want to end the hour with a final thought, and I'm going to go a little bit rogue here, so bear with me, okay? Jeff Zucker's departure was shocking to the staff of CNN. But CNN was not built by just one man, not by only Ted Turner, and it was not led only by Jeff Zucker. CNN is so much bigger than any single individual. It is about teams and teams of people, thousands of individuals who make up CNN. This place is not perfect. It will never be perfect. We will always have flaws. We will always screw up. We will always have to run corrections. We will always have to keep working to make it better and better and better every single day. That is the goal. But the people who say we're lacking journalism, that we've become an all talk channel, that we've run off and we're all opinions all the time, that Jeff Zucker led us astray, those people aren't watching CNN. They're not watching CNN. They're watching complaints about CNN on other channels that don't know what they're talking about. That's the truth. Let's put the map up on screen of bureaus around the world. CNN has more bureaus around the world than almost any other news organization on the planet. Do some of the anchors say provocative things? Yes. Do some of those clips get played over and over again on other channels and mislead people about what CNN actually is? Yes. CNN is the reporters and the producers and the production assistants and the writers and the editors and the technical directors. CNN is the executives, and it's the interns and everybody in between who keeps this place running 24/7. So when something horrible happens in the world or when something wonderful happens in the world, you know where to turn. That's what CNN is. We lost our leader this week, but we're not going anywhere.
Yes, you are. A bunch of you guys are going to be let go. Finally somebody connected the dots for me. I was talking to Crystal about this, and she made the point that there's a reason why all the CNN hosts behind the scenes, according to a lot of reporting, like, they're melting down. Jake Tapper called Chris Cuomo a terrorist. There's another host, is it Camerota? It might be Allison Camerota, who said, "This is affecting all of our mental health." You got this smug stuff coming from Stelter. These guys are acting like, it's the end of the world because Jeff Zucker was let go. Why? Not because Jeff Zucker did a good job as the head of CNN. I mean, honestly, even a minimal amount of objectivity, you'll come to the conclusion that's not the case. They're upset because Jeff Zucker protected all of them. He protected them. He let them keep their jobs even though they suck and they get terrible ratings. So now with Jeff Zucker out, these guys are probably think, I'm on borrowed time. Jake Tapper thinks he's on borrowed time. Brian Stelter thinks he's on borrowed time. I don't know. Allison Camerona, probably the same thing. So that's why they were upset. I couldn't figure it out at first. I didn't connect those dots, but when Crystal made that point, I was like, oh, that's right. That's why they're acting like they're at a funeral. Because whoever's going to come in, if they do their job even a little bit like they should, they'd clean house and let go of all these people. Because they're not good at what they do. They're just not. Now, this smug, self-righteous, stuck-up rant, it's so insufferable, particularly because we know how corrupt the network was acting and how they weren't acting in good faith and how they were trying to cover their ass. Like, the information just came out, Brian. Brian Stelter went on like Stephen Colbert show and tried to defend what Chris Cuomo did with his brother. Chris Cuomo used to have his brother, Andrew Cuomo, governor of New York, on the show during the height of COVID when Andrew Cuomo was getting all this positive coverage. He was doing the daily COVID press briefings. And Chris Cuomo would play footsie with him and play patty cakes with him all day long and say, you know, I think you're the best governor in the country, and how did you get so good at this? And they joke around about mom spaghetti, eating Sunday dinners, and Chris Cuomo would hold a giant Q-tip for some reason that I still don't understand. And it was nothing but propaganda. It was nothing but puffing up Andrew Cuomo to make him seem like he's, you know, amazing and he's the antidote to Trump and he's exactly what you need in the middle of a crisis like a pandemic. Then, come to find out, Andrew Cuomo was hiding the number of COVID deaths. He signed an order to get COVID-positive patients back into nursing homes, which then led to probably countless deaths. We don't even know how many deaths it led to. He was writing a book about defeating COVID when COVID was still raging. There were a number of corruption scandals about Andrew Cuomo. He used the wrong supplies to build a bridge and then tried to cover it up, and those supplies would have made the bridge less safe. And one of his top guys went down for corruption, literally was, I think he was found guilty. He was convicted of something on corruption. CNN didn't touch any of that stuff with a 10-foot pole because they were just having the brothers play patty cakes on air. That is Democratic Fox News shit. These guys love to beat up on Fox News. Brian Stelter wrote a book about how bad Fox News is and how they serve the Republican Party, how they're not news. And then they do the same thing for the Democrats. And he does this smug, sanctimonious rant as if he's not the mirror image, as if he's not the exact same problem just on the Democratic side. And, now we know Jeff Zucker was coaching Andrew Cuomo throughout this whole thing. As CNN is supposed to be a news network and call balls and strikes about what Democrats and Republicans are doing, they weren't. He was coaching Andrew Cuomo through the height of his COVID press briefings and made him this media darling. So this rant is just insufferable. It's unbearable. Because not only did the Chris Cuomo stuff unmask you guys also push Russiagate relentlessly. I mean, they ran with the story. There was a total fabrication of Julian Assange met with Paul Manafort. Turns out to totally be made up, but they ran with the story. There would have been video evidence if that was the case. But they just ran with it. We know that's false. They ran with the Jussie Smollett thing, which I didn't touch with a 10-foot pole because it seemed fishy. They pushed all of our wars. They did the whole Rogan taking horse medicine thing. Now, look, ivermectin is a separate question. There's contradictory evidence as to whether or not it works on COVID, but they were pretending he was taking the horse version of it, and that just wasn't true, and then they doubled down on that and tripled down on that. There was the famous clip when Wolf Blitzer was talking to Rand Paul. Rand Paul said we shouldn't really be arming Saudi Arabia because they commit a lot of crimes and kill a lot of innocent people. And Wolf Blitzer says, well, what about the jobs? It's like, kill civilians, have more jobs. Kill civilians, like, okay, we got to worry about our jobs, right? So if you got to kill some civilians to keep the jobs, what are you going to do? This is who they are. Look, you're not fooling anybody. You guys have a sensationalism bias, and you guys have a pro-establishment bias and a Democratic Party bias. And of course, there's all the advertisers, which means you go soft on the corporations. It's obvious. And I hope that whoever the new person is cleans house, because you guys are really bad at your job. Everybody knows I'm as big of a free speech advocate as there is. But if your job is supposed to be a journalist, you're supposed to be like a reporter, you're supposed to give news and information, and you are just a propagandist, you got to go. And their job is nominally journalist or reporter, and they act all smug about it, but look at their track record. Sorry, guys, you got to go. You got to clean house. I think, CNN needs to change direction. Now, my guess is whatever they replace this current model with is going to be just as bad, if not worse. So we'll have to wait and see on that front. But Brian Stelter, for the love of God, hold this L, dog. Ever since Adpocalypse, when YouTube defunded all independent news and politics overnight, we haven't trusted them. We know they can pull the rug out from underneath us at any time. If you enjoy this content, please consider tipping $1 or $2 per month on the Secular Talk Patreon. Link in the video description box below. Thanks for your support.